Hello friends, this is curl 8.13.0, the release presentation. I did a release just hours ago and now I just wanted to tell you a little bit about it. Where am I? That's me, I'm Daniel Stenberg. That's my website. I work for wolfSSL. I'm on Mastodon. This is release 266, counted from the very beginning, and this time around we got help from 71 people, and we merged commits into Git from 41 different authors. So quite a lot of people, as always. That's awesome. Keeping up the pace, I would say. And this time around, we actually had a slightly shorter release cycle because it was a little bit cut off in the beginning because we did a patch release in the to start it out with. So we had 48 days and we're at 9,875 days since the first curl release. And we have no security vulnerabilities to report this time around, which is fine and good, I think. Good news. And an opportunity for everyone, of course, to go look even harder so that we can find and fix problems even more going forward. We did a bunch of new things, added changes and some new features this time around, hence the .0 in the release version number, right? So starting out, we added a early data in the command line write out option, so you can make your curl tool tell you how much data it sent in the TLS early data handshake phase. And we added support for downloading URLs from a file. So pretty much if you have a file with a lot of URLs, you can now ask curl to just download all those URLs easily without you having to do anything else than just providing the file to the dash URL and the at symbol for the file name. And read up about in the documentation exactly how it works, because it's also then implies using the dash capital O option and so on. So try it out. We have one single new command line option this time. I think this is command line option 267 called upload flags. It helps the user to set different flags for the file email when you upload an email to an IMAP server. So you can set it if it's red, important, and a few other. I think there are 5 seen. Yeah, that's the red one. I think there are 5 different flags you can set for the email, so that it has some default flags set by the time the upload is completed, right? Previous to this, you could still upload, but it would have just the default flag, which was sometimes a little inconvenient. We have a new curl can now follow redirects in new ways, and follow redirects. That's HTTP, right? And the new ways describe the curl opt follow option now has 2 new ways to set the option, and it instructs curl how to do what to do and how to manage the HTTP method. If it should keep the original method all the time, or if it should update the method according to the status code from the HTTP server. This is pretty much in combination with setting the custom request. So the famous uppercase X option with the curl command line tool, it has this problem that if you use it, it'll use that method for all requests, even after redirects, which is surprising to users. And this new option allows curl to not use that custom method on all redirects. And while this is only for the libcurl so far, we have a pending thing. I'll get back to that, but a future curl command line tool will be able to change it as well. This is sort of in preparation for a new HTTP method, a standard HTTP method coming that is called query, and we want to make sure that curl and libcurl can talk this new method properly and the way users really would like it to work. We added a base64 decoding function to the variable system in the curl command line tool, so that you can, if you have a base64 encoded string, curl itself can now decode that in the command line, and you can pass it on unencoded. And it already had the reverse ability, so it can already encode things into base64. So now you can do just more fiddling with base64 with just the curl command line tool. and and I have a separate screen just for TLS related changes, because now you can also set the so-called priority with GNU if you build curl to use GNU TLS with the -- ciphers option. Previously, the -- ciphers options wasn't at all supported when built with GNU TLS. And we have expanded the support for TLS 1.3 early data. Back again to the early data. Early data is a way to send data in earlier in the TLS handshake, pretty much saving round trip time. And we now support it with OpenSSL and the Quick TLS fork, and we also support it with WolfSSL and when you build with those backends, which is cool. And early data really benefits from using the SSL session. So if you want to really play with this, you can enable the experimental support for saving and exporting SSL TLS sessions and importing TLS sessions at startup. Makes curl faster. In the Russell's backend, lots of things happened. We added support for the cert info option, which is getting certificate data back after the handshake. And there's now support for the SSL keylog file system, which is a good way to export TLS key secrets, so that you can, for example, use Wireshark to capture your traffic and still read it. There is support for ECH and DOE lookup and using, the entire thing for ECH, basically getting the secrets from using the HTTPS RR DNS resource record. And Russell's also supports what this screen says, native platform verify, basically meaning the CA store, the native CA store on Windows and a few other platforms, so that you don't need to provide the CA store in a separate file as we typically do with curl. So lots of new things. I think we counted them as 12 different changes, so a lot of things. And as a record in the curl project so far, never before have we had more than 300 bug fixes in a single release, and we managed to do 305 bug fixes during these 48 days since the previous release, which is, that's more than 6 bug fixes a day. It's kind of insane. And sure, there are big bug fixes and there are small bug fixes. So sure, some of these bug fixes are just, touching documentation, but some of them are huge. So there's everything from the tiny one to the really big one. We're counting them all as bug fixes. And I will just go through some of them. I think this is less than 10% of the bugs we fixed. So go read the full change log if you're curious, but let me go through a few. So in the command line tool, we had this discussion how to make sure that people are doing SSH a little bit safer. So now curl will be a little bit more, it'll insist that if you, it'll try to use the known hosts file better. And if there's a known host file and so it'll fail a little bit more if you do insecure SSH, and insist that if you want to do insecure SSH, you really need to use the -k -- insecure option, or ideally you should use the known hosts file properly so that curl can verify that you're talking to the correct server. Otherwise, that might be an imposter, and that's a bad thing. The curl command line tool now avoids doing stirred up on every single command line argument, which it did in the past. And it's just a really tiny optimization, really. And just less memory management. We also fixed a bug when it came to when curl tries to clear some of the command line arguments sometimes to just hide them from the PS output. For example, if you use -u for user and password, that extra argument, curl tries to hide it just basically so that you don't see that username and password when you do PS. And it would fail to do that sometimes. We do not consider that to be a security problem because this clearing of arguments is just a best effort. It's a little bit flawed system, so it's not really a security. It's not really a security related feature, but we're just sort of helping people not to show it off too obviously. To yeah, I think you know what I mean. So we fixed things in the resolving department. We have reduced the number of allocations per name resolve in the threaded resolver. I think I removed 3 or 4 different ones. So now we have sort of reduced. So the number of allocations for per name resolve is now drastically reduced. Basically, they were superfluous, so we didn't need them. Just, cleaning up, tidying up how to do things. We now use on Linux, we can now, not only Linux, actually I think it works on FreeBSD and a few other BSDs too. So now we can use the event FD on all CPUs. Previously, we limited this to 64-bit architectures only for reasons, because event FD is weird. But anyway, thanks to us cleaning up things, we can now use the event FD. Event FD is basically just a way to signal activity from one thread to the other in a fairly lightweight way. So that's the preferred method we have to signal from the name resolving thread to back to the main thread. And we accidentally used alarm for do resolves, which was stupid, and we don't do that anymore. Even if you build with a sync resolver, we can now do. It was another stupid bug. So we have this option curl opt resolve. You can access it with the -- resolve option with the curl command line tool. Basically, you can replace a host name with an IP address. Pretty much, you pre-populate the DNS cache. You can at least view it like that. But you could not replace a IPv6 address with another address, which actually was intended. Now you can. So now you can pre-populate the cache with a IPv6 address and replace it with another address. And we did quite a number of improvements in the HTTPS RR support. HTTPS RR is a fun new DNS record. We have experimental support for it, and it now works a little bit better than before. So if you're being adventurous and want to help out, enable that in your build, try it out and see how it works. And yeah, in the HTTP department, we fixed things like we actually fixed some error handling in HTTP2, and yeah, we had several of these minor things when we had problems on HTTP2 in different layers and streams and everything, and we didn't properly handle it. So in some cases that turned out to be really mysterious error messages. So you didn't really understand what happened, and in some cases we didn't really manage them properly. But so HTTP2 turns 10 years in a month or so, I think, since the specification was published, and we are still fixing things there. Yes. And I made the RTSP version check stricter, basically because we only support RTSP version 1.0, so it should really make sure that we only accept that version as RTSP per our parser, because otherwise we don't understand it. So just cleaned it up. I removed a fairly random restriction on which kind of method sizes we support for HTTP, or we support the different method sizes for different HTTP versions actually. And now I've sort of just made that a little bit more loose restrictions. So now you can actually set really long method names if you feel inclined. I don't know why you would, but you can. We did a kind of fun improvement bug fix. So when you're asking curl to do a download of compressed data and you ask for automatic uncompression, so you ask for example, Brotli, and you get that compressed over the wire, and curl decompresses that automatically uh, on receival, right? But when you would pause such a stream with libcurl, we would pause it after the decompression, not before the decompression, which would make things complicated because we could then potentially have a lot of data instead of less data. So basically we have optimized the pausing setup. So now we actually pause the data before we decode it and uncompress it, which makes things much better because some of that decompressing data can explode it into very big and a lot of data, which makes pausing more complicated. And funny thing, cookies, talking about things that are old, that have existed for a long time, we keep finding problems and fixing tiny things. So the prefix matching for cookies, there are a set of defined prefixes for cookies, and they should be matched case sensitively. And we had been doing that insensitively for years. I don't think anyone ever noticed, but I just happened to run into that and I fixed it. SSH, we fixed few memory leaks in disconnect. Actually, I think it's in sort of in error situations when we did disconnect because something went really wrong, and we had pretty much the same memory leak in all the 3 different SSH backend and we fixed them. So now we should clean things up better in the SSH department. And we also fixed doing large file transfers with libSSH on 32-bit systems because it was accidentally limited to just 32-bit file sizes. Not anymore. In internally libcurl stuff, we had a regression in the previous release that made us not do proper connection reuse for protocols where SSL or TLS is optional. For example, SMTP, IMAP, FTP, and everything. Those are protocols where you typically start without TLS and you do a start TLS and you switch to the TLS state. And if you would do that, we would not do connection reuse properly as we have done in the past, and that's as we should do. And now we do it again. Oops. All right. Sorry. We had a crash in curl that happens if 2 transfers complete exactly at the same time. Then we could pretty much, we would remove one handle and go to the next handle to find, iterate over them as a linked list. But at some points we would remove 2 at the same time, and then the linked list would be destroyed and we would just get confused and we would crash and everything would burn. We fixed that. It's better now. It'll be even better going forward because we have some refactors to do in this department. Right, that's basically what we fixed. So that's pretty much the same thing, I think. Never mind. We fixed some event handling on the connection shutdown management, because I don't know if you remember, but we restructured and redid the connection shutdown management a bunch of releases ago, and we still have some fallouts from that. We're better with it than now. There were some problems with this curl WS cont flag and how we managed that for WebSocket, because it wasn't really clear how it was supposed to be used. And so now we have clarified the documentation and we have fixed the code. So ideally it should work better now. I think what confuses people is that it's called curl WS cont as in continue, but it's not exactly the same as the underlying WebSocket cont opcode, or I think it's continue in WebSocket. So anyway, you really should read the documentation if you want to figure out how this works, and not just assume that you understand because you understand WebSocket. So what else? Yes, I ran into this that so we have this setup, or the RFC 3986 that explains how to manage URLs or URIs actually. It's an old URI, has existed for a long time, and it says how to manage dot sequences in the path, like slash dot dot slash, for example. They're supposed to remove, you know, or a dot or a slash dot slash also. So and stuff like that. And it turns out that if you then have such a path, but the dots are URL encoded as %2e, curl wouldn't remove them, but all the browsers do that. So pretty much I have improved the dot dot removal thing in curl to also consider %2e's as dots in the URL path and remove them. A little bit complicated, but yeah, just minor fix. And we fix some of the scripts too that we're working with. We've been working recently to remove base64 blobs or chunks from the Git repository, just to for hygiene there, to clean up and make less give less or sort of fewer opportunities for something to hide data in the Git repository, because large chunks of base64 is weird, going back to the XZ attack thing. So we have then, for example, we removed all the test certificates from the Git repository because they didn't have to be there, and now we generate them dynamically in the test suite instead of having them in Git. Nicer, fewer files in Git, fewer weird files in Git, and it's actually nicer all around. And we've also removed a bunch of other base64 encoded sections in the test suite in general, as well in the same direction. We want to have less base64, less ways to hide data. Data should be there in the open and plain to be understood, and you should be able to figure out what it is. Right, and now we don't have any more binary data in any test files. They're actually now encoded in the hex markup that we have for test cases. It also makes the test files sort of easier to transfer between systems and so on, because they really shouldn't contain binary data, and this just better. We have fixed so we have this script that generates completion for a few shells, fish and Z shell, I think. We generate some completion scripts so that you can get completion in those shells. And that script has for a long time been using the dynamic output from the curl command line tool to generate the completion scripts, which has always been sort of a pretty lame, because if you then build curl, for example, cross-compiled, then you couldn't generate these completion scripts because you couldn't run curl because it was built for a different platform. So now that has been rewritten to instead use the static files that we have in the source tree. So now you can generate these completion scripts even if you cross-compile or whatever. Just a nicer approach. That was the bugs that I wanted to mention this time around. So we're also going to remove a few things in this year going forward. So for example, after May, which is, let me say, in about 2 months, we're going to remove support for TLS libraries that have no 1.3 support and probably won't get it. Those are bare SSL and secure transport, so we will remove support for those. I think that's going to be pretty much after the next release, then they are out. We are going to enjoy having less complications and it's a leaner code, and users will not sort of get tricked into using TLS libraries without TLS 1.3. TLS 1.3 was released a specification in 2018, so it's not exactly brand new by these days. We're going to remove support for the MSH3 library in July. That's one of the, well, the HTTP3 library that just the the library might be fine, but the supporting curl is, I would say, half-baked. It's just doesn't work, and no one is working on it, so we will just rip it out. We might, I mean, it's still possible that we can bring it back in the future if someone wants to work on it, but right now it's just a broken piece of thing that just sits there and complicates our lives. And in September, we're going to remove the the Windows WinBuild build system. We call it WinBuild. It's a particular subdirectory in the source tree. It's for building on curl using nmake with make files. This is there's a path to switch. If you're using this, you should switch over to generate these files with CMake instead and build like that. And we have a documentation for that. And we should not leave any users behind. We should just, get rid of one build system. We have so many already, so we simplify our lives by this method, by cleaning up. So the next release we are planning on doing is most likely going to be 8.14.0. I shouldn't really say most likely, but I should say ideally this is going to be the next one. We have this tradition of doing .0 releases and finding out regressions and then having to do a .1 release after a week or so. So maybe we will do a .1 release if we have to. If we don't do a .1 release, we will do 8.14.0 the next time instead. We'll see about that. And in about a week, we know if there's going to be a patch release or not. This time around, we have done release candidate releases before the actual release, so we have had a chance to find and fix a few regressions. So fingers crossed we did it a little bit better this time. So we have a few things that we might be doing next. We have a connection event callback suggestion that has been lingering in GitHub for a while. That might be coming. We have an option to disable the WebSocket autopong. I think this is coming. Pretty much leaving it to you as an application author to do the pong when you're writing a WebSocket client. Currently, curl does it by default, so you can't really opt to do it yourself. Curl will do it for you. I have this proposal. Maybe we'll go forward with that, to an option to normalize URLs with curl URL get. It's a little bit of a tricky thing, but who knows? And as I mentioned about this location following, redirect following logic thing, we have it supported in libcurl now, a new way to handle redirect following combined with a custom HTTP method. And we have this proposal to sort of bring that functionality to the curl tool as well. It should make redirecting with custom methods better, easier, more convenient, and ideally then hopefully also help them with using the query HTTP method going forward. There is more work to do on HTTP SRR, and I'm sure that the more people that are actually trying this out and trying out, see what it does, what it works, what it doesn't work, and tell us about it, and we can polish this going forward. I hope that we can maybe switch off the experimental flag for this soon. Maybe not for the next release, but this year, ideally, I would hope. And there's another PR in the queue that I think is fairly mature and might be ready to support for MQTT pings. similar to the ping pong in WebSocket, to make sure that the connection has traffic and not sits idle, to make sure that it remains working over time. So the next release is planned, hopefully, to happen on May 28th. That's 8 weeks from today. That's the URL for the pending, always sort of in, not always, but occasionally we sync that so that it'll be up to date with pretty much what is in Git and what is in the planned pending release. So go read that when you want to see what's in the queue for the next release. And the release cycle for that we use, or that you can expect for curl, is that this is the release Wednesday. This is today. And then we have this cool down period, so we won't merge any new features until the feature Saturday, that's in 10 days, on April 12th. And then we open the feature window, which is going to be open for 21 days, during which we allow new features, new changes, and things that are sort of changing things that are not just bug fixes. And then we have the freeze Saturday, and then we have 25 days of feature freeze until we do the next release. So this is the always sort of on and on and on release cycle. But now we have, so since this previous release cycle, we have introduced the RC1 that happens on the freeze Saturday. We have 9 days and then an RC2 Monday, 9 days and RC3 Wednesday, which is then exactly 1 week before we do the release. So we have complicated the release cycle a little bit, or we have completed it with release candidate releases. They are intended to help us find regressions and fix bugs before they end up in a release. And we encourage people to try out our release candidates to help us improve curl and make better releases, really, because we want to make sure, or we want to do everything we can to reduce and minimize the amount of regressions in our final releases. So that's the way we do it now. So, and of course, the next release Wednesday is then planned to happen on May 28th. So that's the release cycle. If you have curl in a commercial environment and want to have support, get in touch. If you find or just run into some problems or bugs with curl, submit them on GitHub, and we will work on fixing them. If you find or suspect a security problem in curl, go to hackerone.com/curl and report them. And we have a bug bounty system. You can get quite a lot of money if you find a serious problem in curl. And these are our fine sponsors of curl. They are the same ones as have been the same ones for a while. These are our good friends that make sure we can keep running curl the way we want it to, and we like them for that. And that's what I wanted to tell you about curl 8.13.0. And this is the 47th video recording I've done about curl releases. So I'll see you soon in another one.